Today we're playing a game called The Misadventures of Tron Bonne. Apparently pronounced Tron Bonne. I've never played this game before. In fact, I don't even know what genre of game this is, so that should be fun to discover. You know, I was trying to describe the scent of tea recently, and I thought maybe it's a bit herbal. That's not quite correct, because I know what herbs smell like, so I thought maybe it's a bit floral, but that's not really right either. I know what flowers smell like. It smells like tea. I don't have another descriptor. It's just kind of its own thing. It's shaped like itself. It's also interesting to me because, one of the most common things people talk about is how much, the scent is such a part of flavor, yada, yada, yada. But what really amuses me is how few people talk about other things like temperature. I've talked before about how I have that perfect tea flavor to point where it just tastes perfectly correct. But that's true with other types of foods too. Too hot and it's unpleasant, too cold and it just loses the flavor, right? And honestly, this is probably drifting into a little bit of a texture thing too. A lot of people I know have issues with certain types of textures of food. I know someone personally who can't eat avocados or guacamole because of how it feels in their mouth. It's not their thing, right? They like the taste of avocados, but they can't deal with the texture. You get the idea. And so it's all these little things. It's funny to me because I don't know, when I was growing up, nobody taught me jack about cooking. I kind of had to learn as I went through trial and error and error and error and error. And eventually started learning about things like, for example, how to plan for temperature and texture when it comes to making a meal. There's also the visual side of things. Now, the visual side of things doesn't always matter. If you plop down something that looks gross to someone, but then they take a bite and it's great, that's whatever. But when I was taking care of the kiddo, my niece full-time, I learned very quickly that if she saw something that she didn't like the look of, she wasn't even going to try it, even though I knew she was going to enjoy the flavor of it. So it's like, well, okay. And so you have to start working on presentation value, and it's this whole thing. And it's actually fascinating to me. It's one of the reasons I find food to be such an engaging discussion, because there's so much that goes into food, and there's so much variety to it. And I've only started finding out within the last, honestly, probably about 5 years, about how the different chemistry with every person's mouth and the not the like the pH value can change flavoring, and how gut chemistry, how different bacteria or microbes or whatever can change how you process different foods and how your body reacts to different foods. And there's just so much that goes into it. It makes me wonder because how do you even process all that? Well, the easy answer is you don't. This is probably one of the biggest reasons why processed food has become such a big thing, at least in the country that I currently live in. Because processing, well, it causes a lot of problems, but one of the biggest ones from a flavor profile perspective is it usually flattens down a lot of the flavors. And you know what I'm talking about, right? You know exactly what I'm talking about. Because if you have a processed meal, it just doesn't have the flavor that a properly home-cooked or, real meal is going to have. Instead, what they usually do is they slather it with some kind of sauce or some kind of spicing or flavoring to add flavor back into the meal. Which reminds me about mustard, but I think I've talked your ear off too much. Let's go see what's going on with this game that nobody's going to watch. I've got like 5 people watching this, and one of them's going to comment, and that one person's going to say, I don't like avocado either. And then they're going to say pumpernickel.